Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Town Council meeting this evening, February 8th, 2022. If you would please, we're going to roll call. Albert Yance.
Here.
David Harwood.
Here.
Melissa Pickett.
Here.
Doug Matheson. Here. And Pete Guarini.
Here.
Okay, Pete, you'll have to refrain from any voting till you're sworn in, and then, of course, you're officially obligated to sit next to Doug Matheson. All right, would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, moving right along here. Approval of minutes, January 11th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So made.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Albert? David? Melissa? Doug?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of minutes, January 20th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Albert?
Second.
Melissa?
Aye.
Aye. Doug?
Aye.
Okay. All righty. Well, we have the oath of office. Now, this is for Pete Guarini. Hillary Hubner will give him the oath. And I wanted to let Pete know that, I was kind of concerned because I thought maybe an election was coming up again before he got back. But welcome home, Pete, and welcome home to your bride. And congratulations.
I'm on the opposite side. Wait a minute, which hand? Put your right hand in your left hand. Okay, now go slow. I, Pete Guarini,
I, Pete Guarini,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear,
that I will support and maintain
support and maintain
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States,
of the United States,
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the state of North Carolina,
of the state of North Carolina,
and the town of Loving Rock,
and the town of Blowing Rock,
not inconsistent therewith,
not inconsistent therein,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of council member
of council member
to which I have been entrusted
that I have been entrusted
without fear or favor,
without fear or favor,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Roosevelt.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we're so pleased to have you home.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you for running and putting your name in the hat, and welcome on board. All right, moving right along. Regular agenda adoption. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the regular agenda? Okay. Albert? David?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Pete? Okay, so regular agenda is adopted. Consent agenda. This is tax release 2021-02, tax refund 2021-02, High Country Breast Cancer Race, budget amendment 2021-03. Now, keep in mind, council, there's no discussion on consent agenda. So do I have a motion?
So made.
I'll second.
Okay, Doug, motion first, then Pete, second. And Albert? David?
Yes.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And Pete?
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda is approved. Thank you so much. Now, public comments. Keep in mind, we please keep it to 3 minutes. And all due respect for those that do want to speak and for moving the meeting forward in a very productive manner. So if you would like to speak, please get with Hillary and give her your name and address. We have one so far. It would be Mr. Rick Parsons. Mr. Parsons, would you step up to the podium? How are you, sir?
Just great, thank you.
Fantastic. Welcome.
Always good to be here.
Just for the record, if you would state your name and address.
Certainly. My name is Rick Parsons. I live at 1577 Green Hill Road, and I'm here once again to talk about my favorite subject, which is traffic on Green Hill Road. I have printed out for each of the council members and you, Mr. Mayor, a copy of the summary of the Rainey Kent study, a response to the study, and the primary conclusions and recommendations. I will not go into this in detail at this point because I only have a short period of time. I would like to say for some of you here this evening and myself, it's our anniversary. This is the 5th year that I've been coming to speak to some of you about the traffic problems on Green Hill Road. And I'm here again to talk about the same problem. During that time, the traffic and speed data volume data has been collected numerous times, and of course, most recently, an independent traffic study was conducted. And yet, the cars continue to speed, and the noise can still be heard for miles from the Parkway all the way to well past Edge Hill Road. The public comments in the recent study were overwhelming in highlighting the speed and safety concerns on the road. And although there were many problems with the data used in the recent study, it does demonstrate a chronic speeding problem on Green Hill Road. Shane has put up some of that data. Some of that other data is included in the report that I gave you. I'm demonstrating from the least biased data some of the issues that face us on Green Hill Road. Now, this is a summary of the southbound traffic indicating maximum speed reported by hour over the period in which the data was collected. So it's not happening all the time, but it is what is actually car speed that have been recorded. The black is 10 to 14 miles over the posted speed limit. The yellow is 15 to 20 miles over the posted speed limit. Of course, orange 20 to 24, red 20 to 29, and of course the star is almost 40 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. And that's 65 miles an hour. It's actually 64 for the record. So I don't know what you think about a residential street, but I don't consider 60 plus miles an hour being a reasonable speed. Now, approximately 380 cars a day travel in both directions on the street. And if you look at speeds over 10 miles per hour above the posted speed limit, that would equate to about 50 to 60 cars traveling at speeds 10 miles or higher over the posted speed limit daily. You extrapolate that to the northbound, you're now talking about 100 to 120 cars a day speeding. Again, I don't think that's typical for a residential street. These speeds were similar to speeds that were recorded as far back as 2017 in previous studies. So this isn't a new problem. It hasn't become apparent because of the road. It's always existed. It's just gotten worse. Now, enforcement's not a solution. You can see it happens in almost every time period. So if you wanted to enforce this problem away, it'd have to be 24/7. I don't think that's cost effective, and I don't think it's the best use. During the study, it was recommended that speed indicator flashing lights were put there to indicate the speed limit. Those weren't paid attention to during the traffic study. That sign was flashing 25 miles an hour while people were still speeding in both directions. To suggest from the study that that should be implemented again really makes no sense at all. So So really what we come down to are the two options that we had known about since day one: stop signs and speed bumps. Neither of which were really addressed in the study. As a matter of fact, with the exception of Green Hill Circle, no other street, no other intersection between Green Hill and the Parkway was actually looked at for safety and visibility issues. And it wasn't until the town council brought it up about Fairway Court that they went back and revisited that intersection for visibility and ultimately put in a stop sign. Now, if that problem exists there, it exists at Heather Ridge and Wonderland Drive. It also exists where you have speed problems at where Wonderland intersects. All of these problems and the lack of stop signs and or speed bumps contribute to the speeding problem. Now, I'm over. Okay, sorry. Speed humps, one last thing about speed humps. No one likes them. I understand that. Snow removal doesn't like them in the winter. I suggest if you want to consider speed humps that you can put in temporary speed humps that you can take out in the winter. That would solve the issue with snow removal. But you have not addressed any of these in the study, and during the question period from Raymond Kemp, not a council member asked any questions about speeding. And again, the data supports the problem. The question is, what is the town and what are we going to do about this? I'm here to help provide solutions. But it's 5 years now. It's enough time to kick the can down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. All righty. Well, I'm sure that's going to be an ongoing discussion for the years to come, hopefully months to come or whatever, so. All right. Moving right along, we have a presentation, and this is a resolution honoring one of our longtime physicians, Dr. John Davis. Now, we were trying to do this in a timely manner to where Bucky DeVant could be here to roast him, but we're moving ahead of schedule. So Dr. Davis, I think if you would step up, please, and your beautiful bride, if you would like. She is the best man. We all have what makes us successful is beautiful people like that. This resolution, I'll have to read it. My eyes aren't what they used to be. This is whereas Dr. John Davis vacationed in Blowing Rock as a young child visiting Grandfather Mountain and Tweetsie Railroad in the early years of operation. And whereas in the 1980s, Dr. Davis served in a medical rotation at the Blowing Rock Medical Clinic as part of his residency training, and whereas Dr. Davis was recruited by the DeVant family to join the team at the Blowing Rock Medical Center, where he was part of the practice for 40 years. And whereas Dr. Davis and his wife, Anne, decided to make Blowing Rock their long-term residency and raise their 3 children here, because Blowing Rock is a wonderful community to raise a family with wonderful friends and neighbors. Whereas Dr. Davis faithfully cared for the people of Blowing Rock and the surrounding area with dedication, skill, providing the best medical care and advice. And whereas Dr. Davis not only contributed to the community with his medical expertise, but also served as chairman of the Parks and Recreation Committee, and saw the completion of the DeVant ball field, upgrades to Robbins Pool, and early renovations to Memorial Park. And whereas after retirement, Dr. Davis and his wife, Ann, plan on continuing to reside in Blowing Rock. Now therefore be it resolved, the mayor and Blowing Rock Board of Commissioners, on behalf of the citizens of Blowing Rock, wish to honor Dr. John Davis for his retirement and faithful dedication to the medical needs of the community on this 8th day of February 2022. Dr. Davis. ladies and gentlemen, if Bunky Devant, or excuse me, Dr. Charles Devant shows up, we might have to take a pause for the calls to allow him to at least say something, hopefully positive, about Dr. Davis. So he said something about being here at 6:30, so we will do our best if that's okay with council. Okay? All right. Moving right along. TDA board appointments. Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Now that we have a full board for the first time in a number of months, the Town of Blowing Rock Tourism Development Board is comprised of a 5-member board, which you're aware of, one of which is a current seated town council member. After the resignation of the prior TDA council member, the seat has been vacant. The town council shall appoint a new member that will serve a 3-year term beginning immediately. So it is on you all to nominate and appoint someone to the TDA board. The next meeting is scheduled for March.
We have a nomination, guys? Gals?
I would like to nominate Pete Green. I think Pete would be an excellent choice for that. Certainly knows the landscape and would have a lot to contribute to that board.
Second.
Okay, we have a nomination made by Mr. Harwood, seconded by Albert Yance. Any discussion on Pete's nomination? Pete, are you in favor of this?
I am indeed.
And we know you will serve admirably.
I will.
Thank you. Albert? David?
Yes.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Pete.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
And if I may veer a little bit from the agenda, did I see Dr. Bunky Devant show up? Dr. Devant, you just missed, we were moving a little ahead of schedule, but is there something that you would like to step up and say in positive note of Dr. Davis?
We were doing real well till you got me on the positive note. What did I miss in what we've already said? You got me? Okay, Charlie asked me earlier if I'd like to say something for the presentation, and I told him it really took somebody with more stature than I had. I thought he could do a better job. I worked with John for right at 40 years. He came to us from Asheville. He was a Moorhead Scholar at Chapel Hill. He was a Moorhead Medical Scholar at Chapel Hill. And if he'd worked a little harder, we probably could have gotten him in Duke.
That's true.
He worked until he was 69, I think, and decided he would take a little break to devote himself to his real love, which is computers and electronics. And they actually had planned to do this, you retired at the end of April, they wanted to do it in May or June, but they found out they couldn't do it until you had completed all your paperwork. A lot of which is probably still in your basement. But we'll let that go. But
Careful, I'm the one that's still the keeper of the clinic records.
let's burn that one. Anyway, but I do have to thank you for 40 years. You did a great job. Everybody misses you. Everybody loved you. And the only thing I've got to say is he left me the only man in the office, 12 women. You can handle it. When you get to my age, you can't even handle one fantasy at a time.
Thank you, Dr. Devant.
So I have an email from Charlie saying about 6:30.
Yes, and that's what I told the council, and so we deviated from the agenda, always knowing that you are always timely and sometimes early. And Dr. Davis said, hurry up, and let's get this over with before Dr. Devant shows up.
Quite fast enough.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Thank you, Bucky.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. All right, moving right along. Council, thank you for your patience on the deviating from the agenda. This next section is Maple Street, one-way versus current. Police Chief Aaron Miller.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. As I'm sure you recall, Mr. Roger Brooks was hired recently by the TDA to make some recommendations about traffic and tourism and some things in the area. One of the things during his presentation that he brought to the forefront was the issue of Maple Street and how there was some issues turning onto Maple Street off of Sunset Drive. So I've been asked to provide some information to council so we can discuss if there needs to be any changes made to Maple Street. So Mr. Fox came to me a few weeks ago and said, what do you think about Maple Street being one way? And I said, well, Maple Street probably should have been one way 20 years ago. And then I started digging into it and getting some information, and I found out why it's probably not been made one way in that period of time. But if you can forward to the next photograph. Oh, you've already got it. So here's the first photograph, and this is kind of the issue, is that the end of Maple Street on the Sunset Drive end is very narrow. It's probably wide enough for two cars to pass if they're driving perfectly. One of the things that compounds this problem is that you're making a 90-degree turn sometimes off of Sunset onto Maple Street on that end, and it becomes too narrow for two cars to pass. So sometimes one car has to stop and wait. And as Mr. Brooks pointed out, we have some wayfinding there that points people to parking. So we've made this one of the main entrances to our Maple Street parking lot. So as most of you are aware, if you turn down Maple Street from the Sunset Drive, or from the Main Street end, Maple Street is two-way, then it becomes one-way, and then it becomes two-way again at the other end past the entrance of the parking lot. So that's why this issue was brought up. That's why Mr. Brooks brought it up. Taking some measurements, it's 15.5 feet there on that end. That's just another photograph showing the difficulty in turning. So this is the section of Maple Street that we're really talking about. This section is two-way, but then you can see when you get up there at the Maple Street parking lot entrance, it becomes one-way coming from Main Street down. This is a photograph looking down from the Main Street end. This is where it begins one-way at the Maple Street parking lot on the other end. So one of the suggestions, and of course it's wide, it's a pretty wide street up there, it's 18 feet, there's a center line painted, there's really no problems with vehicles passing up on the upper end. So one of the issues that's been brought up is whether or not to make Maple Street a one-way street from the top entrance of the Maple Street parking lot all the way to Sunset Drive. Obviously, there are some issues with vehicles passing on that end. So we did start to solicit some information. I reached out to the Ragged Garden, and I appreciate Rob and Lisa's constructive input on the issue. One of the things we ran into was some of the delivery trucks that are trying to make deliveries to the Ragged Garden Inn and to the businesses, what was Savannah's Oyster House, some of the other businesses on Sunset Drive. They have to turn in off of Sunset Drive onto Maple Street to try to get the trucks in to make those deliveries. That's one of the issues that we've ran into. Another issue that Ragged Garden has brought up is the very narrow entrance. I think that's been there more than 100 years. Am I right about that? So when that was built, we didn't have automobiles in Blowing Rock. We used horses and carriages, and that entrance is designed for horses and carriages, and it's very narrow, so it's very difficult to turn larger vehicles into that main entrance, and sometimes they need to use the Maple Street entrance to get in. So one of the suggestions might be that we need to lose some parking spaces on Sunset Drive in order to make their entrance usable for bigger vehicles. We also talked about bringing trucks, larger trucks down from the Main Street end. One of the questions and concerns that I have, and that's been shared by others, we're not sure if some of the larger box trucks can make the turn that's there on Maple Street near Miss Burns's house. So that's one of the issues that we've run into as well. So what I thought was going to be a very simple issue that, yes, probably it should be one way all the way down has proved to be a little bit more complicated than that. So that's the information I have.
Chief,
Any
what's
questions?
the feasibility of making it one-way off of Sunset to the parking garage? In other words, Sunset to the parking lot.
The only downside that I see to that is you're taking all the traffic that's leaving the parking area and you're dumping it back out on Main Street, which is already congested. And that's also a pretty busy and somewhat difficult intersection to get through, especially in the summer when we have a lot of pedestrian traffic. In my opinion, it's better to try to route as much traffic as we can away from Main Street and get them back down to Sunset. But that is an option that we've discussed and
Would that enable truck traffic to get into Ragged Gardens?
It should.
Sunset.
It should.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
One observation, if I may, just in the snow the other day, there was no, people were stuck at the hill.
Rick, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Chief, this might be a question for Mr. Rothrock, but it's, I believe our standard road width is 18 feet, is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Correct.
And so it tightens up just down at the bottom, right?
Well, it tightens up. If you travel down Maple Street from Main Street, it starts tightening up near Miss Burns's house, just past the parking lot entrance. And then you go into that very narrow turn, which I think is nearly impossible for two vehicles, especially larger vehicles, to pass in that turn. So that's probably why that section was originally made one way. But it does start to narrow there, and it continues to be narrow all the way down to Sunset Drive.
The turn is not a product of the parking, it's the product of that.
No, it's just the way the street was designed. There's rock walls on both, there's a rock wall on one side and a driveway entrance on the other side. But there's really no way to widen that without taking out the rock wall that surrounds the Maple Street parking lot and probably taking out a few parking spaces in the Maple Street parking lot and relaying the wall.
Yeah.
There's not much way to make it any wider without starting to tear out some of the rock work that's been here for a very, very
There's no
long time.
radius there, it's just a corner.
Right, it's just a corner.
So would you say slower, what you said about taking some parking places off Sunset for loading and unloading?
One of the issues that Rob and Lisa from Ragged Garden brought up is that it's very difficult for large vehicles to turn into their main entrance on Sunset Drive because there's some parking spaces on the other side. But that might make it easier if one or two of those parking spaces were eliminated, the ones that are closest to the school bus parking lot. I think I had a photograph of those spaces. Yeah, these two spaces right here, basically, where the car's parked in this other space. If those spaces were eliminated, it would make it easier for larger vehicles to turn into their main entrance.
When you're saying larger vehicles, are you saying like like a Dodge truck like I drive?
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
not a delivery truck?
Exactly. A large Dodge pickup, a Suburban, anything like that's going to have a real hard time making that turn. And even if you're coming up Sunset Drive, you're probably still going to have to swing across both lanes of traffic to make that turn in. It's really, really tight.
Right now, they're just parking in the street, correct?
Some of the larger delivery trucks are parking in the street. The food delivery trucks are usually like a tractor trailer kind of set up, and they park in the street. Rob and Lisa told me that they had several smaller delivery trucks that are able to come in to their parking lot off of the Maple Street side, and that keeps them off of the street. So if we did make that one way and they weren't able to turn up in there, we would be pushing a few more delivery trucks out on Sunset Drive making deliveries. And that's also the case. I have observed delivery trucks making deliveries to like Savannah's Oyster House and some of the other businesses there. They also pull up in there and back around in behind Savannah's. So that would probably push all those delivery trucks out on Sunset Drive as well.
Chief, could you mark that section, I've seen it done in other communities, a loading and unloading zone from certain times?
I'm sure that's something that we could consider. I put some thought into that, but I'm sure we could look into that.
I was going to ask if it was all, now, there's a lot of things that we, like the chief mentioned, that just came up here recently. If we could actually table this till, like, we don't know if a box truck can even make that turn there at Janice Burns. We'd like to get some measurements there, find out what will make that turn. A couple of ideas that's been thrown out there to let the chief explore a little bit more, like those 2 parking spaces, maybe just making them a loading zone and let the trucks go from there across the street instead of trying to get in, just some things that the chief has recently thought of that I'd like to see him narrow down for us, if that'd be all right.
Yeah, I do think we've had quite a bit of input since this was put on the agenda and since we started soliciting some input. So some more time to study and come up with some other possible alternatives would probably be great.
I think that's a great idea. I'd like to look at potentially putting a radius there. If I recall, that aisle is a dead-end aisle. So we could look at that. Stonewall needs work anyway, so what we might be able to do. Yeah, I would support that.
I would too.
Okay, so you all are in agreement, you want to table this till more research is done? Okay, all right, so no decision will be made on the Maple Street one-way versus current until more information is brought back to the council. Chief Aaron Miller.
Sounds great, thank you.
That good, guys? Okay, all right, thank you, Chief. All right. Moving right along, Chatola Lake Cofferdam. Mr. Fox. Dr. Davis, have a good evening. Thank you. Davis.
We don't live in Alton, it's really the one block.
That's okay. Have a good evening. Got it? Ready?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mr. Kent Tarbutton and Greg Tarbutton is also on the meeting tonight via Zoom. They are coming before Town Council to respectfully request assistance in removing the soil and other debris that's collected in the stream and Cofferdam area at the Chatola Resort. This is a follow-up request from the September 8th, 2020 regular Town Council meeting in which the council at that point chose to table it until a future date. So here we are on February the 8th, 2022 at that future date. I did provide in your packet the original information that was a part of September 8th, 2020 packet, along with a copy of the minutes from September the 8th, and then the additional information that was provided via email from Mr. Kent Tarbutton, and then historical data as well from the original easement agreement in 2014 that was provided. So you all have had that information as part of your packet, and at this point, I'd be more than happy to turn it over to either Kent or Greg. I'm not sure which one has chosen to go first, or maybe they can fight it out among themselves. So.
I'll kick it off, Shane, if y'all are ready. Thank you, Council, for hearing our request. I thought it was interesting when you mentioned what the town looked like 100 years ago, and when that street was made, there wasn't a turn there. I saw pictures of the downtown Blowing Rock area in about, I think it was the 30s and 40s that Jerry Burns had, and it showed dirt streets. And I imagine that was about the time Luther Snyder decided to put that cofferdam in. It made good sense to capture that stuff before it goes into the lake. He then, as now, realizes that as the town grew, stormwater management was a problem in Phillips Lake, so that cofferdam in. I read back when we started looking at this years ago that there was a statute or a policy in North Carolina, I don't even remember now, but I remember reading about stormwater, and in towns over 50,000, they had some, it had all kinds of things in it, but you had to get on a list and request help from your town, and towns would step up and help with soil management on private lands and lakes. Now, this town isn't 50,000, so it's not required to do anything. It never has been. And if this town ever became 50,000, so it's probably wouldn't want to live here. But I think it makes a pretty good statement about fair play and setting a moral standard. If your neighbors feel suddenly got a lot of water and wasn't well maintained and put metric tons of soil over your property, your lake or your driveway, I'm sure you'd want them to do the right thing and remove it. So the town in 2013 started talking to us at our request about dredging that lake, Bull Lake, so we did. You got all the documents on all the bidding and everything else that went on through the process. Because I know some of y'all are new and haven't seen these documents back in 2 years ago when we presented them. And you'll find, and I'll just summarize it tonight because you've got the documents, but the basics are that for about half the price of what we can get a dredge for, we can go into business. And that's where we have Greg and I kind of the dredging business to try and save money. And it did. We were able to do that lake. The town came forward. At that time, the council thought about it, debated back and forth, and eventually gave $200,000. The homeowners that you told, and we put $73,725 in, we all dredged that lake. Make sure of several things that I can guess why they did. I would say it's 4 things, and I'll wrap with that. They realized that since the drought that began years before, and that's in your documents, back in 1998, 1999, and 2000 was a big drought in Boiling Rock. And that lake provided over the next 2 decades over 750 million gallons of water sent to the town of Boiling Rock to use that we all needed. I think it was probably one of the reasons, realizing that it's a great backup water supply. I think they also knew from that earlier study that I had done, the Army Corps of Engineers determined that 84% of all of the stormwater that the town of Boiling Rock produces goes through the lake. I've been real happy to see the town council working with DOT as they did that road project out in front of all of us, the expansion. They've done some marvelous work with the stormwater then. And I know the town has continued to budget annually. I see it in your documents that you're continuing to do stormwater management. That helps their lake. But in reality, still here, and you can come over and see it. I gave you old pictures that are 2 years old of that coffer dam filling completely up and coming to the surface and dumping all that into the lake. So you know, they knew that 84% of that comes into our lake and drops all the silt. The Army Corps back then told us that they liked that because in modern times they realized that one big retaining area was better than a lot of small ones. It gave a much bigger space for that water to allow the debris and the silt to drop out, which is exactly what we did in our lake. I think the third thing they knew was that they wanted to maintain the water quality of the New River. This is one of the 4 bodies of water that start the New River is the lake. So I think they were conscious of what environmentally this was doing downstream. I think lastly, they felt it was fair, they felt it was equitable, and it was reasonable. And I guess I come to you with that same humble request, considering that you follow the precedents that's been set and help care for this important resource. It's there when you need it, and silently it collects all that stuff that comes downstream every day. So that's all I've got. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions. All those documents show you all the numbers. Our dredge does it cheaper than anybody up here and does it more environmentally soundly. So that's why we work with Alaloski and Haldeers and Tweaky and everybody else over these last couple of years. I think we're very effective in the price increase we're doing it. And you've got the price that's not even in front of you, it's like 19,000 and change. It's in documents. And go to the bags. And I'm hoping to then turn to the citizens of Boiling Rock, I'm sure they will, and put it in the paper and just say, come get it. Last time we had several people bring their pickups and dump trucks to get loads of it. As you know, when we did the lake, it was, that bids in there too, but I think it was several $100,000 to move that dirt, get rid of it. Back then, in the recession time period, it was a little harder for those who want it. But Blue Ridge Mountain Clubs came forward and tested it, and all it needed was a little line. So they took almost all that citizens didn't take. So we would certainly provide that for all of those who want to get their yards back in shape, and hopefully it won't run back downstream to the lake. That's all I got.
Council, I would add the request is $19,431.60 is the request that's been made by Mr. Tarbutton.
And that's the price that we gave you back in 2020. And we have, as I mentioned in our letter, increased that with that dredge operation, but we are not going to raise it in this scenario because we requested it, and we would think it would just be fair if we had that bid in to leave it there.
Council, may I say something?
I prefer to let each of the council members talk first.
I was waiting. That's my call. Go for it.
Well, that would be the proper procedure. What would be? Anybody care to?
Go ahead.
Great. Kent, I do have a question. I'm a little confused as to why Chitola is asking $19,000 of the town.
Sure.
Can
Well-
you state that?
Go ahead. Is that the whole question? Why am I
well,
asking the
that's-
town to make a vote?
Yeah, because I'm confused because there seems to be two issues. There's an issue of sediment, and then there's an issue of having water capacity for the town's emergency water needs. And so I'm trying to decipher between, is this request because of silt buildup that supposedly is coming from sources within the town limits, or is this to facilitate enough capacity in the lake for emergency needs of the town?
Good question. Good question. They really tie intricately together. So let me address it. First off, it isn't. We didn't substantiate the 84% of that coming from the town. That was our Army Corps of Engineers study. So that's the one of the documents that we sent over. They determined years ago when we had to do a full breach dam study for the Department of Insurance, who was going to cancel our insurance on that dam when it was drive-by appraiser made it a high-risk dam. So I had to spend thousands of dollars to show there wasn't. During that study, he had to get the information from the Army Corps of Engineers, how much water is coming from every direction, from the park, which is over on the Moses Stone side, and from the town, coming in by the dam there at the Copper Dam by security. And they came back and reported 84% in the study that we paid for back then. So that is how much is actually coming in from the town. I think that's why they gave us the money back in 2014 to help dredge the lake, was that Copper Dam stops that, flows it down and stops most of it from going in the lake. So if you keep that smaller area cleaned out, that's why I say there are captures of the board into this lake. That is coming from the town. That's the only place it can come from if you look at that stream and where it runs, and all the streets and the different things that come down through that stream. When we get good storms like we've had, it brings down a whole lot of silt, and that trying to capture it before it enters the lake, because it's a lot cheaper to take it out of that silt dam than it is to take it out of that lake. I think the reason the two are combined is because they realize, one, that the town and all the infrastructure the town allows brings all of that down into our lake. There's many towns that have a fee in place in construction of new properties to take care of stormwater, because they realize that that's got a cost to adding more buildings that don't allow it to penetrate the soil and come downstream. So anyway, as it comes over the Copper Dam, it comes into the lake and fills it up, and that's your water supply. That's the emergency water supply. And I think that's probably why they looked at it two different ways. One was to say, hey, we are sending all this silt to someone's private property. And the other thing, from all over town. And Chitola as well, we send our own. I'm sure there's some there. And it has to be, because stormwater just does that when you have big rains. But we all try and prevent that, and I think the town's done a remarkable job in the planning that they've been doing the last 5 years in trying to remediate how much that's happened. Because as we continue to build, we're creating more space that does allow water to penetrate the soil, and it's going to make rushing streams come, and that's what we're dealing with. As it fills in the Copper Dam, it comes to the lake, and then you reduce your water supply. Because that lake, when they decided to dredge it, was between 2 and 3 feet deep in different areas, and if we had an emergency, it would not be provided for at all. So I think both of those are connected. And I think why we come to the town and ask is because it's the water of the town and all of us who are paying taxes, who are sending all our debris through the streets and oil and everything else that comes into that lake. And then it's left there for us to contend with. And for 20 years, or a little over 2 decades, we willingly and happily gave the town free of charge over 750 million gallons of water that you sold back to all of us once you purified it. So I felt like I was getting the town's water, it's dumping all the silt and cleaning it all up for everybody so I don't hurt downstream fisheries and all the trout streams that connect to the New River. And yet we were left with the burden of carrying that. That's why I came to the town recently and said, hey, this isn't really fair. You know, I'm taking all the water, I'm cleaning most of the silt out before it goes downstream, and then I'm giving it back to you. We did that for 20 years. So I think it's fair to come back to the town and say, hey, you need to help preserve this natural resource. You now have a pipeline to Boone, but if there's an emergency that comes again, you'll be looking to Chitola Lake to try and get water, and we all need it. When JB called me and asked me for that, I told him bring it over. I'd be happy to sign it, because when we turn the spigot on, we all need water. And that's why I think the town should have it.
Well, I don't know if it's free of charge. I went, in 2014, the town paid $200,000 to Chitola. And I went back and looked at the minutes from the June 25th meeting. And I'm going to quote that. It says, as compensation for past water emergency access and usage, and to help dredge the lake, which will help ensure that future capacity exists, Chitola is requesting the town's financial participation. Due to sediment buildup from stormwater over the years, the depth of the lake has decreased, and the water capacity of the lake has decreased, making dredging necessary. So, in my opinion, it seems that the town was paying $200,000 to ensure an emergency water supply, but not necessarily taking liability for the silt. And just because 84% of the stormwater comes into the lake doesn't necessarily mean 84% of the silt comes from that stormwater. I mean, what I'm saying is, I'm not sure that 84% of that silt is coming off town property, because this stream winds through the golf course, several other lakes. It runs through a lot of private property before it gets here, and that private property has eroding banks.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
I feel like that the payment that was made in 2014 was really to ensure a adequate emergency water supply, which we don't necessarily need because of the interconnect, but we did need at that time. There's no, and I want to emphasize that we're very grateful. You have been a wonderful neighbor to the town, but I also think that we paid for that graciousness in 2014 to the tune of $200,000 to help buy dredging equipment. And which, so I feel like my personal opinion is that silt, I would have a hard time voting to give $19,000 to this cause when we really don't know the origin of that silt. And if the town is liable for that, then we should probably take a look at that. But I don't have a study in front of me that states that.
Well, let me cover a couple things. First, I'll get the Army Corps study, because I don't know anybody better to do that study than the Army Corps of Engineers. And I think that maybe that's what you need to read to see what this comes from, because that was their determination. If they're saying 84% of the stormwater comes through there, I can come back to them and certainly say, all right, you want to give us a reading on how much of that is silt? As it comes in from other sources, we all are participating. I said, there's no question about it. And I think that's why both the homeowners put up a little over $74,000, whatever it was, to the documents you have themselves, because they felt like, we all felt like, yeah, we all share the responsibility for this. Let's talk about the $200,000 and the payment that you said that you feel is equitable. In one of the letters I've given you, and it's in the packet, I quoted what the town sold that water for. So no, you haven't made it equitable. If I wanted to charge the town for that, the town would have been in a bad position, because they were within, it's in the letter JB sent, and then we signed, we had it contractually in that year when I agreed for 1 year to do that, and did it for over 20. You'll see in there that JB was very clear that they were going to run out of water, and I think he said 7 days, maybe 8, but it's in that letter. So I certainly could have hung you up to dry then and said, yes, but I want half of what you charged the town for water. You know, I never asked you guys to reduce my water bill or Chitola's water bill or anything along the way. And 200,000 is a pittance. If you look at those, and read the rest of the documents, David, that you have from that meeting in 2020, you'll also see that the other bids against Chitola were over 2.5 times what we charged to do that job. I think we've been very equitable in that. And I think that if you're saying 750 million gallons of water you paid for with $200,000, you better calculate that out, because you're way off track. There's no way that you would buy. You get the deal you have with Boone right now. Go calculate it on that and see what you come back with. You're not even close to the ballpark. We think it's fair because you take soil and send it in early, and you need to help us clean it out, because that's what's going to be a backup emergency water supply. Yes, you got a pipeline to do, but we may all need that one day again. And this isn't my deciding factor. I'm not going to threaten you in this meeting and say, well, you can go somewhere else and find it. But I'm not very happy with a town that doesn't participate with us when we participated with it for 20 years, David. I think it's unfair. And I think you're saying that $200,000 is equitable. You haven't really done much research into what the costs actually are.
I didn't state if it was equitable or inequitable. I didn't cut that deal. I didn't cut that deal.
I thought you said you paid for it already.
Well, there's no reason.
I didn't cut that deal with Chitola. I didn't say it was equitable. But if that's the case, at what point is the town square with you on your good deed?
It's not my good deed. Let's forget that I gave the town water at all. And let's just talk about the silt that's coming in the lakes. You know, again, you're not held to the document that the North Carolina has, whatever it was, the statute I read, it's towns of over 50,000 that they go after stormwater on private property. So you're not liable to do anything. But as I said to begin with, it's not about liability, it's about responsibility. It's about what you think is equitable and fair. If you think that there's no need to pay anybody for taking a whole swoop and dump it on private land, maybe one day you'll have that happen to you and you'll go, golly, my neighbor's field just washed behind, and he'll say, hey, it's not my problem. That's your problem. You take care of it. It's on your land. And then I'll have to be responsible for it. Either way, we're going to dig this out, whether the town helps us or not. It's starting to erode against Chitola Lake. And the last thing I'll say is go back and pull the document that Alan Mosley drew up when we got the $200,000 and read that real carefully, because it provides, it says that you'll help us maintain that lake and dredge that lake as long as we want to keep the agreement going that's used for emergency water supply. And it can't get any more shallow than 3 feet before all that's off. And at that point, that lake's filled in, and that's what was happening. It took many, many, many years for that to happen. And that's why we keep dredging out that coffer dam to slow it down from happening. But I think everybody wants to use that lake, and I think it's only fair that you help keep that if that's what you want.
I have a question.
Yes.
It keeps coming up about this being our emergency water supply. Is the equipment still in place to pull water out of the lake?
Not currently.
The pump is not all the lines. You bury the lines underground. When they first put the pump out there, they leased it for several years and then finally figured that, they're going to keep using it. So they bought that pump. I don't know what the town's done with it now. It's been removed. We at our expense built an enclosure around it so it'd be more attractive and less noisy for our guests to go down to the dam to fish because it's right there. We really wanted to put it on the downside. And I don't understand the environmental engineering, but they really didn't need to be on the upside of the lake for some reason. Instead of catching it after it went over the dam, they wanted to catch it before. So the pipes were then overground, ran through our parking lot for years, and we didn't even request it. I was very happy, though, that the town came back and said, hey, we want to bury these lines. So they're buried between us and the town reservoir.
So if we were in a drought, say tomorrow, and needed emergency water, we could pull it out of the lake tomorrow?
You could, well, you got to get a big pump, but yes, we also allowed Bill to get an easement, put a power line there and bring in power and all that kind of stuff. And that is still in place. We could not remove it. So you would have to put a big pump. If y'all kept that pump or not, but the town did buy it way back when. It's no longer on the site, but everything else is.
Hasn't the state made a ruling about the water in Chitola and our usage of it?
In 2019, I believe that is correct, the state looked at the quality of the water and gave us a report. That was after the interconnect was completed, and the choice at that point was to remove the pump and rely on the interconnect. So those decisions were made along the summer of 2019. So the pump had not been operable, I think, for a little while at that point, and removing it was the choice of the town. That was my decision at that time. The pipe, as Mr. Tarbutton said, remains there and will probably remain there for a definite amount of time. It's been buried completely from end to end.
Does the water have anything to do with the state's edict?
It did. So the state looks at the quality of all water sources and puts a high precedence of wanting to obviously maintain the quality of water, the type of quality of water that's coming out. And so that, along with, again, not having prior interconnect, the decision was made to remove the pump.
Greg, this is Pete Guarini, and thank you for your presentation. My question is, looking forward, this is going to be, it seems, an ongoing problem. Do you or Doug Chapman or any other people have a long-term thought process or solution to how this might be rectified? So in 5 years, you're not coming back and saying, you need more money.
I don't know that I'm really qualified, Pete, to answer that. I'll give you my limited understanding. Let a real engineer talk. I see Doug Chapman's name is on the chart here. I would just tell you that that's why Luther built the cofferdam. And Greg and I were very frustrated with all of it coming into the lake. We talked about building one further up on our property, but all that's going to do is back it up into the property across the street and flood that area, because that's a low area. If y'all remember, years ago, the Beavers built a house inside that culvert underneath the road there, and it immediately backed up into the property across the street, which is now Doc's Rocks, and flooded that whole area because that's low anyway, and started backing up into the town. We don't want to do that because I don't know of any other solution than to build another cofferdam to back it up further, so I'm not dealing with it coming into my property as much as backs the soil up and elsewhere. The problem, and I think that's why Luther built it again, is that you've got to capture it somewhere. The town is doing things. If you certainly look over what they spent the money on the last couple of years in stormwater management, is there evidence to see they're trying to find ways to divert that and slow it down. The whole process is to slow that water down, which is why a lake is so good, because it allows it time to filter out the water when it's been moving very fast. So to take it and build it like a cofferdam really doesn't do anything to give you another collection area before you get water. And frankly, when it hits 100-year floods, you don't get that anyway. It's moving so fast that it really doesn't have a whole lot of chance to drop out before you. But that's pretty rare then.
Shane, is Doug on?
He is. Doug, do you mind weighing in your thoughts on recent activity from the town's perspective and what we can do potentially going forward?
Yes, as Ken said, the purpose of putting the cofferdam is catching the sediment before it spreads out into the larger body of water, because it's much harder and much more expensive to capture in that area. Trying to remember all of Pete's questions, I would say that you're never going to stop sediment in the stream. It just, you can't stop it. Even with intense erosion control and good ground cover and good management within town, there will always be mud in the river to some degree. So even if we had everything covered, this cofferdam will fill again over and over and over. Whether that happens every 5 years or every 20 years, it's hard to tell. But it's going to happen repeatedly.
Yeah, I'm thinking to comment on that. I've think that this would be the third time in my next 25 years. And I would say it would have been longer, but we really got a huge amount of it when the road was being built. That caused erosion everywhere as well. And
yeah, I would say the highway construction through there has had more impact on sediment in that area than anything else. Obviously, any other point activity, and probably most everything else put together.
Doug, are catch baskets like we've talked about in the upper ponds of Broyhill, is that an option in this area that can be taken out, emptied, and put back in?
The pitch basin is pretty large, so it's probably impractical to put small devices in that area. Using the cofferdam is probably the most efficient way to do it on this scale. because you, as Kent's pointed out, I remember the 86%, but not that square area. But this area drains all the way up, all across the country club. It drains Main Street Main Street East, all the way over to Green Hill Road, and basically from the dam, the lake, all the way up to where 321 turns there, where Main Street comes out over this, the entrance to the country club. So all that area drains in there. So it's probably too large of an area to do something different there.
And to try and make it equitable, I would answer again on all of us homeowners participating. You know, that's why I've suggested to council in prior years that they might consider adding something to their building permits so that we collect these funds so that it's taken care of. I mean, I think it's everybody's responsibility. I don't think it's just the town, but the town is everybody's. So let's approach it. But I would say to you that by having, lots of towns have that. They have a stormwater management fee because they realize it's got to be paid for somewhere. And they're collecting for it when people build, when they get additions, when they get permits, to make sure that they're going to cover the cost of what it costs to maintain good stormwater control.
I'd like to ask Alan a question. Alan, when looking at it, do you see any legal liability that the town has there?
I assume that you're talking about the agreement that was entered into in 2014.
Right.
Okay, so Ken alluded to the 2014 agreement. David's alluded to it. And we, as David stated and as Ken agreed, this really had two components to it. One component related to the volume of raw water that had been transferred from Chatola Lake to the town reservoir. There was an excess of 93 million gallons. The $200,000 was stated in the agreement to be a one-time payment for the water that had been provided by Chatola. And then the other component of this is the stormwater runoff. And I think the town at the time recognized that the town has not always had a comprehensive stormwater management ordinance. And the town felt some responsibility. It doesn't relate to just town property, David. It relates to every project in town. And as stated in that study, 84% of that stormwater runoff finds its way, or did at that time, find its way into Chatola Lake. So the underlying feeling at the time was that the town felt in some way responsible for helping out because Chatola was absorbing all of that. Now, is that a legal obligation? When this document was done in 2014, we talked about, the last paragraph says, this easement agreement shall continue and remain in effect until such time as an alternative raw water source and related capacity is identified by the town of Blowing Rock, or Chatola Lake reaches an average depth of 3 feet and needs to be dredged again to manage its emergency raw water capacity. So what we contemplated was we might be back here someday talking about this if the need was still there for the raw water capacity for the benefit of the town. As to the stormwater runoff component and the cost that Chatola is going to have to incur to do this work associated with the request tonight, is that a legal obligation? I don't think that it. I mean, this agreement didn't provide that was a legal obligation. as to whether we still need that raw water supply from Chatola in light of things that have occurred since 2014. Maybe we don't, but does that negate the notion that the town should help Chatola out with respect to the stormwater management? That's up to you. Does that answer your question?
I was just curious to see if we were legally obligated there. I was reading that paragraph also. So.
Ken, is that a fair summary?
I think it is, yeah, I believe it is. Yeah, we agreed that who knows what the future holds, but you may come back again, and at that point, you lose your new water supply, you lose the critical line, whatever happens in the world. We wanted to be able to resurrect it if needed. And then I said, well, guys, if my lake is full, I may ask you to help again. And they said, all right, well, what do you want? And I said, 3 feet. If it gets to 3 feet, which is where we were, 2 to 3 feet, we'll be vegetable. Because frankly, it's 8 acres. So at some point, you want it to be a bigger water supply than that. I mean, 8 acres and 3 feet, I don't know the calculation I had. It's a fair amount of water, but it's nothing like 10 feet, 20 feet. So that was the agreement. I think that's what was left out of it, something like that. Yes, I think you summarized it well.
May I speak now? Thank you.
I have one more question.
Go for it.
Would you like to speak, Al?
Go ahead, Al.
Go ahead. We got you.
Kent, I want to make sure that I understand what Chatola Lake is. I understand it's an amenity for the resort and the homeowners there. Beyond that, and it serves as a stormwater management solution for Chatola. Beyond that, what purpose does it serve?
Well, it could serve more, actually, because when I was involved with a project that failed during the recession on the lot next door to us, I don't know if you were aware we were in that deal or not, but we had put up stormwater. There was a real contention on the town's part that I could not sell off stormwater rights to that lake. And at the end of the day, I could. And they said that the use of that entire property next door with the project was projected that would have produced less stormwater than the thinness of a dime on that lake, and it had much more than that capacity. So it has capacity for, as this town builds on and gives more permits, to handle more stormwater. That's what's, I think Doug would agree that, and Doug chime in when I go, of course, but I think the more you build, the more capacity for stormwater you gotta have. So Chatola Lake is providing that in our future as well, which once again is why I kept coming back to the town with a suggestion that you might think of adding some penalty to building projects so that, because this is not a problem. I'm with Doug. I read all the good things the town is doing, and I've mentioned them twice per meeting now, and it's true. I mean, the DOT did, too. The town council negotiated pretty fiercely with the DOT on that 4-lane road out there, not only to make it beautiful, but also to make sure that they were doing some stormwater work, because we had real problems out there that were flooding near the hotel that's been built since, and across the street from us. That lot was flooded fairly regularly before that project was completed. But as all that's done, I'm with Doug in that word that you will always have stormwater, and you will always be cleaning it out somewhere. And if you're cleaning it out on private property, do you have a moral obligation? Do you have a feeling that you should help your neighbor? I don't know. That's up to you. Just like you said, I can't answer that. I feel like you should. I would for my neighbor. And if my neighbor does that to me, which is what I'm doing here, I would come back and say, hey, I think it's your responsibility to help me. It's always going to be there, and that's why many towns have put it in permitting fees, because they know they have the responsibility of cleaning up the stormwater and getting rid of all that product somewhere, so that they charge people for building projects and additions and renovations, so that they cover the cost of what that's going to be stormwater.
Albert?
Well, the record will show I was in favor of this 2 years ago and probably remain that same way. But after all this happened 2 years ago, we couldn't really make a decision here. I think you weren't here, David. Doug was. Is that about right, Doug?
David was here. Doug was.
You were. And I started thinking, something big contributing to this. It's not just people's yards and new construction, as we hear, because silk fences help with new construction. And a place was discovered on the property of United Community Bank. And it was a feeder creek into the New River. And it was a real problem. Correct, Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir.
And you got our engineer and Matt Blackburn, and I believe didn't some stormwater people have to get involved in all this?
So we visited the site numerous times, I think, over the years. We had a number of storms that have caused erosion issues on both pieces of property there. So the former Papa Joe's restaurant property and then the bank. Even beyond that, as you go west to the back towards the storage buildings. New River Conservancy visited the site. I know McGill has been at the site, as well as others throughout the years. And most recently, the bank alleviated that issue, essentially rerouted a section of the creek, provided some storm water assistance there with truing up the bank, adding some riprap and things of that nature to that. So that's all been in the last 12 months that process has taken place.
Well, FYI, the bank is not adverse to their name being used as paying for this.
Correct. The town did not pay for that. The bank
They
paid
did
for
not want the figure to be used, but I could say it's just short of 6 figures that they paid to help with a big problem. That was a lot of silt coming down through there in storms. And so my point is, mitigation has, in my opinion, and maybe the town's engineer, eliminated quite a bit of the percentile of what's going to end up in the cofferdam in the future, hopefully. To me, that's the way the town should be looking at this, as to what we do right now will be a question for the 5 of us. But that problem was fixed with no cost to the town.
Pete, Doug, Melissa, David, Albert. Okay, if I may, Council, I just wanted to say early on that Chatola is a strong contributor to our community. You drive in North Main, and there's that beautiful lake. Growing up here, that lake was there. I can't speak for you, Council, but as a citizen, I feel like that it's my job as a citizen to support other citizens. And Chatola is an icon in our community, just like every other business in our community. And so I think we should keep that in mind. That's all I was going to say. Do we have a motion or suggestion or?
I'll throw something out there, just for discussion. I'll make a motion, we meet them at 50% of what they're asking, or at least 10,000.
So you make a motion, Doug, for $10,000. Okay,
I would second that.
we have a second. Now,
That's just open for discussion.
do we have any discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion?
I feel that we should remit what they asked for now, but I want Doug to explain his motion a little and more in depth, Doug.
I just brought that number out as meeting them a little more than halfway with what they were asking. I know he's furnishing his equipment. So, and he were asking, I think Greg was 19 something, so I felt like that we would meet 50% of it. And like I said, that was just to put a motion out there to get it started.
I would also encourage us, if we do the 10, to work with the town staff, with Chatola staff, and like the New River Conservancy and such, to start working on that section of the lake, of the river in town, which Shane and I have a meeting hopefully in the next week or two with New River Conservancy, to start working on river rebuilding and to help with situations like this too, for a long-term solution.
Well, both those comments are reasonable to me.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. David, comments?
Well, I would ask if Twigs comes and wants their lake dredged, or if the country club comes and wants any number of their lakes dredged, all served by this same stream, are we going to pay them $10,000 each out of some obligation that we feel?
I think everything has to be on a case-to-case scenario. I mean, at this point, they do have the study to show that they are taking on, I will be honest, I don't want this to be a reoccurring thing. That's why I want us to work on long-term solutions. I mean, when they did the $200,000 in 2014, which has been, somebody help me with my math, 8 years. And I mean, you know, we're doing this one, the cofferdam. This is a different section than which was dredged last time. I completely understand your side of it too. I mean, I've thought about through this, you know, in the same section, what if Meadowbrook comes down and says they want their lake dredged or, you know, dug out? It'd be hard to dredge that one, but dig it out because it's in the same section. But I mean, this is another one of those situations where, you know, we have to be team players in town, but I do believe that we can be a team player, but we do need to seriously concentrate on the long-term solution in this.
Well, I don't know that we do, because this lake is an unnatural body of water. It did not exist before, I believe, the Snyders built it. It is there purely for pleasure. At one time, the lake supplied ice for the town. I believe it may have had power generation for the Snyder house, but it doesn't serve any of those purposes now. And there were some say that the dam needs to go away and restore the natural stream. So I feel like the town is perpetuating a private amenity for the resort. And this feels like a sweetheart deal to me. And I don't know where you draw that line. I am not arguing that the Tar Buttons and Chatola have been nothing but fantastic citizens. And I appreciate that, as does every citizen of this town. But I also think there was a $200,000 payment made by this town in appreciation for that. So I don't see the point of this other than just because you feel like it.
Okay. I'll answer your question a minute ago on for me, is that agreement was 2014. Since then, there has been quite a bit feed into there, but I'm not wanting this as a recurring payment either. I'm offering this as of meeting them of half of what they had asked for, mainly because it is, to me, the end of the line right there for everything that comes through Blowing Rock, because after that, the city limits ends, pretty much. You don't have a whole lot of stream left that's in the city limits. I don't want this to come to us really again, so I would like for it to be, you know, it's a one-time payment to help with what has built from 2014 till now. And then Mr. Tarbutton either works with the town or works with somebody at finding another solution for this going forward.
But that would actually be left to a new board.
Right.
At the time. Yeah.
Pete?
I'll support Doug's motion as long as there's an ongoing and solving situation that either Doug or Greg or people can get together and provide some long-term solutions.
If I may say, I know it has been brought up, stormwater studies and so on and so forth, that should be something that would be focused on in the next couple of years. And other communities do have stormwater fees. And that may be something that the council will address at the time. Don't know. But yeah, I think Melissa has a good point where, you know, we need to be proactive and not reactive. Right now we're being reactive, and be proactive and try to fix the issue. So that's my take on it. So.
Well, United Community Banks stepping up and paying for something is a big start.
That's right.
I agree with you, Pete, but I can't agree that we can't dictate to another board that might sit here and hear this 5 years down the road. I don't think.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and we have a second on the table.
The motion is
to approve $10,000 to go towards the dredging of the Coffer Dam to Chatola Lake.
Is it half or $10,000? Is it half or $10,000?
Right.
You're saying 10.
Well, I said 10,000. Sorry.
Okay.
I rounded it off. It was not, his estimate was not.
So you're saying 10,000
Right.
in your motion? Okay. All right.
And along, yeah.
Albert? How do you vote? David?
No.
Melissa?
Aye.
Doug?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you, Kat.
Thank you for y'all's consideration and your time. I appreciate it.
I didn't hear what you said.
Thank you for
Let
wasting.
me say lastly that we very much would like to work with the town on any solution. And Doug, you know, we're very happy to meet with you anytime you want. We can find a way to control it better. So thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Have a good evening. All right. Moving right along, I have only one comment. I think it's unfortunate we are losing Wells Fargo Bank. I've had numerous calls on it, and so it's very unfortunate we're losing an anchor business like that in our town. And that's all I have. Albert? Comments?
Well, that's news to me, but I hope they don't get out of town before I get my rewards for credit card. Great meeting tonight. Welcome, Pete. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Albert.
It was a good meeting, and that's in some deference to some former meetings. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Albert. David?
Yes, I want to say welcome to Pete as well. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad both of you are back. So it's nice to have 5 council members up here. It really is. The only other thing I would say, and my guess is it's going to be echoed down the line, is kudos to the Public Works for, I'm not trying to steal your thunder, Doug. I knew you were going to say it. As I know Shane is going to say it, is that thank you so much for the snow removal. Just a Herculean effort. I texted Shane at one point during the storm and said, I have had a truck go down in front of my house once every hour. And that's just me, and it's just amazing. And I can't say enough to all those guys and all the volunteer guys that stepped in to help. from the fire department and other sources, I imagine. So those are my comments.
Melissa?
I agree. It's great to have Pete home. And the other half, we're happy y'all are back.
Thank you. Thank you.
I missed my running partner. So. I do have some good news. As my last act as a BRAC seat, we got approved to be Tree City USA again this year. So I got the email 2 days ago. So we'll get to do that again. Need to make sure Jennifer plans our Arbor Day celebration, Shane.
Will do.
Kudos to Public Works also. You obviously don't live where the rest of us do on Green Hill. We don't get hourly service, but that's okay. We do get out.
I don't have anything to do with that.
Doug?
I would say it's good to have the missus back. And also echo what David had said about the staff. Great job. Fire department, Parks and Rec, everybody who contributed during these storms that we had on top of each other. In your handout tonight that Shane gave you, it's a thing, legislative goal achievements. These are some of the things that we achieved this year at the league. From our goals, some of them were even when Miss Sweeting was here. When she sat on one of the boards down there and helped narrow it down. But these are some of the achievements that the league was able to do for municipalities this year. So if you just look them over, you'll see that we are trying in the league.
Pete?
Thank you, and thank you for all your nice comments. I ran for town council to represent all the residents and property owners in Blowing Rock, which I will do. I ran for town council to help the mayor and my fellow council people get things done, which I will do. I ran for town council to help our town manager do his job, which I will do. And as a close, I'd like to thank my campaign team who worked long and hard with volunteers to put me here. So, and then also thank you to my wife who put up with me. Thank you.
She's just beginning to put up with you.
Thank you, Pete, and welcome home.
Thank you.
Mr. Mosley?
No.
Mr. Fox?
Certainly, Mayor, Council, a few updates on some projects that I'd like to give tonight, along with a few other things. So we did cancel the Bass Lake ribbon cutting schedule for last month. We were planning to do that on the March 8th date at this point. So I'm assuming at 4:30, maybe 5, but we'll get that confirmed. So that's coming up a month from now. The crosswalks had a meeting today, or a discussion today about a meeting next week to begin the crosswalk project. Luckily, all the materials should arrive by February the 15th, so that's just a week from today, which is great news. Those were a little delayed in getting here, like most things are right now with supply chain management issues, but all the materials should be here next week, along with a pre-construction meeting with McGill and Greens Construction, which is the contractor that won the bid, and the boring work should begin perhaps the following week. So you'll start seeing work on the crosswalks. I believe tomorrow or Thursday you'll see the underground utilities and lines marked, starting prepping that work for the full work and the boring that will begin the week of the 24th, I guess is what that is, of February. So you'll start seeing some activity out there, which is good news. So the crosswalks, again, have a project end date of May 1st. So that's a fairly short project, but will be a very important project to have. This week is our annual retreat. We didn't move that as well from January. So February 14th, 15th, and 16th, that's at the American Legion, is open to the public. We'll also televise it as well live, and then we'll record it on the YouTube channel for anyone to go back and watch if you wanted to catch up on 24 to 25 or so hours worth of retreat discussion. Laurel Lane trees, if you remember back in the end of December, we noticed and had a citizen point that out, who's here in the audience today, that we had a tree issue on Laurel Lane, 2 pine trees that needed to be removed, large pine trees. Those are scheduled to be removed starting Monday morning at 7 a.m. That work should take about 6 hours or so. So we'll have 1 lane of Laurel Lane closed Monday morning starting at 7 until early afternoon. We'll put that on the Facebook page later this week on the website, and also we'll have on Friday and Sunday our hyper reach alerts go out to citizens, especially in Mayview, to let them know that that 1 lane will be closed Monday for that. Our e-newsletter is set to go out this Friday the 11th, so that'll be the first time that the town has put out a e-newsletter, electronic newsletter. So previously, and we will continue to do the water bill newsletter, the bi-monthly newsletter, but this will be a every other week newsletter that we plan on putting out on Fridays to keep everyone informed of what's going on in the town, and there'll be some neat sections about employees and awards and things of that nature to share. So that will be coming out this Friday. If you have not signed up, you can sign up through calling Town Hall, or we have the links on our website as well, or just stop by and we'll get you signed up for that newsletter. Also wanted to echo the snow removal. I, of course, had a couple numbers here to share. We pushed snow starting on the 16th of January for 72 out of 73 hours. Someone was pushing snow in town. So I'm not sure what happened in that 1 hour, if they slept or what, but we did have a total of 7 volunteers, including the fire chief and assistant fire chief and others from the fire department that participated, especially in our Main Street and Sunset Drive cleanup. I will go a little different and thank our full-time mechanic, Steve Norris, which does not get a lot of thanks, but several years ago, this council made the decision to have a full-time mechanic. That comes into play more times than you would realize, especially when you're pushing snow for 72 out of 73 hours. There were rear ends and trucks that were completely taken out and replaced during this time frame to keep the plows on the road. Also would like to have a special thanks to our landscape department that volunteered to give up their 1 large truck that they have to become a plow truck when we had another plow truck involved in an incident. I say this to say it is a full team effort, like it always is. Everyone showed up to do the job that they needed to do during this time to keep the roads clear, and I appreciate that in the midst of COVID and everything else that we've been dealing with. We continue to always amaze me at the amount of work and teamwork that we put in. So very thankful for that work that was shown during that storm, and I'm sure, no doubt, it'll be shown again if we have another incident. Same type of response. So that's my update.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going into closed session, and thank you for attending this evening. And let's look forward to spring. I think everybody's tired of the cold, but yes, we will be going to closed session, and no decisions will probably be made during that close or after that closed session. Would you read that, please?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we go into closed session.